Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a historic event here on Wish TV. I'm Phil Sanchez.
And I'm Kylie Conway. For the first time in state history, Indiana's political conventions are live on television. The coronavirus is still blocking most large gatherings, so Wish TV has agreed to host the events on our statewide news network.
And we start tonight with Indiana's Democratic Party.
I'm a Democrat because I believe in protecting freedoms and families and allowing people to achieve their potential in life.
I'm a Democrat because I care about people and I'm committed to doing the right thing.
I'm a Democrat because all individuals in our community should have an equitable experience.
I'm a Hoosier Democrat because our party cares about education.
I'm a Democrat because the values of fairness and opportunity are central to everything that we do.
I'm a Democrat because I think we should have compassion and kindness for everyone.
I'm a Democrat because I believe in justice for all.
I'm a Hoosier Democrat because the Democratic Party in Indiana represents all of the values that I hold dear.
I'm a Democrat because I believe in equality for all.
I'm a Democrat because I care about our community and I want to see it grow and prosper.
I'm a Democrat because our party fights for the people and for the people's rights.
The key to the Democratic Party is our belief that there's a balance between government and individuals and that the government can help us, can perform, and should be ready to perform. That's why I stand with the Democrats.
I'm a Democrat because we're the party that fights for public education, organized labor, and every Hoosier that matters.
Welcome to our 2020 State Convention preview. My name is John Zodi, and I'm proud to be the chair of your Indiana Democratic Party. I'd like to start by thanking our partners at Wish TV for the opportunity to beam this convention preview into homes across Indiana, as well as our sponsors for tonight's broadcast. As our country and our state grapple with the murder of George Floyd, Hoosiers and Americans are rightfully angry. Angry because of the cycle of injustice lurches on. And voices who have time and again demanded change have gone unheard. Angry because the moment demands a unifier capable of elevating the conversation, and our president cannot or will not meet the moment. Change starts at the ballot box, but it doesn't end there. We cannot allow people of color to be marginalized and erased if we truly seek to achieve a more perfect union. That responsibility is with all of us. It starts with speaking up and understanding and saying that Black Lives Matter. This starts with elected officials who reflect the communities they represent, and that is why 2020 will be the most critical election of our lifetimes. As Hoosier Democrats, when we lead with our values, we win. Just look at 2019. Over 300 Hoosier Democratic women ran for office in 2019. More than 140 diverse Hoosiers and nearly 100 young Democrats put their names on the ballot. And we scored historic victories across the state. Victories like electing a record number of women mayors. Victories like landslide wins in Indianapolis and Fort Wayne, and the first Democratic councilors in Fishers, in Carmel, and in Avon. We won a majority on the city council in Mike Pence's hometown of Columbus for the first time in 40 years. We won in rural areas, suburban areas, and urban areas. And those victories set the table for 2020. So this evening, our candidates for statewide office will lay out their vision for our state. Tonight, we'll hear from party leaders like Mayor Joe Hogsett, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, and Congressman Andre Carson. We'll also discuss the critical issues facing Hoosier families. We'll do this because our vision for the state is an Indiana where residents live in vibrant communities they are proud to call home, where they earn the Midwest's highest wages, send their kids to top-ranked schools, and live healthy, fulfilling lives. Livable wages, early childhood and strong public education, access to affordable health care, safety, security, equality, and equity, fairer elections. Democrats are fighting every day for these principles to build stronger communities across the state of Indiana. And there is no one who fights harder for these principles than Congressman Andre Carson. I'm proud to introduce our Congressman for the 7th District of Indiana, Andre Carson.
Hello, this is Congressman Andre Carson. Over the past 4 months, the foundation of our way of life has been shaken by a crisis that will define a generation. More than 1.5 million of our fellow Americans have been infected by COVID-19, and tragically, more than 100,000 have lost their lives. Not since the Great Depression have we witnessed current levels of unemployment. If we have learned anything from this pandemic, it is that we as Democrats have said all along, and it's clearer now, we must enact true universal health care coverage. Quality health care in America must be something more than a personal service for those who can afford it. It must be a right for every single American. It's not just universal health care. We must expand paid leave, make prescription drugs more affordable, fully support our doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals, and invest in health agencies. At the same time, our nation's long-festering wound of racism has been newly opened through acts of police brutality. The times are harsh and demand us be real with each other. So I'm going to speak about young black men being murdered, not killed, murdered on the streets of America. It's not 1650, it's not 1750, it's 2020. And while a lot has changed, too little has not. If you feel ripped up, and I know you do, if you feel alone sometimes, I understand. If you feel it can't possibly get any worse, know that we get it. I hear you, I see you, and we see you, and I need you. If we are going to find our way through these very uncertain times, it will only be if we can find the humanity in each other. We need each other. Because of the simple truth, which is this, we are all that stands between the most faithful election of our generation with 4 more years of Donald Trump. Change is inevitable. Positive change isn't. Positive change only comes from hard work and sacrifice. Dr. King called it unarmed truth, unconditional love. But this isn't a time for just words. It's a time for action, a time for strategy, a time to plan, and a time to vote. So as we look forward to the general election this fall, if someone else asks you why they should vote, tell them, because our lives depend on it. Thank you.
I'm Treva Hodges, and I was elected mayor of Charlestown in 2019.
I'm Miles Nelson, and I proudly sit on the city council in Carmel.
My name is Grace Kessler, and I've been elected to City Council at-large member in Columbus, Indiana.
My name is Alex Burton. I am the city councilman for the 4th Ward here in Evansville, Indiana.
I'm Robert Pope. I'm a member of the Avon Town Council.
I'm Rod Robertson, mayor of Elkhart, Indiana.
I'm Kristen Jones from Indianapolis City County Council.
Hi, my name's Chris Cow, and I'm the mayor here at Tell City.
I ran to continue serving my country and my community.
I ran for city council because it was important to me to set an example for my children, to let them know that one person can make a difference if they're willing to roll up their sleeves and get involved.
I also believe that young people have a duty to get involved and be engaged in their community.
I ran for city council on the premise of 3 things. It was hope, economics, and the future of Evansville.
I was tired of seeing ineffective government. I was tired of seeing things swept under the rug and a lack of openness, a lack of respect for citizens at the local level. And I just decided that we deserved better and that I could offer that.
What it means for winning mayor of Tell City is that the citizens are going to have somebody who is going to be very progressive in the community. They want to see it grow. They want to see new businesses move into the community and see improvements in our infrastructure and our quality of life.
Our constituents were super excited to have someone represent them. Republicans and Democrats, independents, libertarians, across the board were super excited to have representation.
It was exciting to win and become the first Democrat elected in Carmel. But this is only the beginning.
My win means to me that my community is more unified than what our town boundaries or our district lines actually show.
My win means a lot to the people of Elkhart. It means that everyone is looking forward to having input in the civic process.
It's It's really important to create a diverse fabric of individuals that bring many concepts and ideas to the table.
We have always thought that people should be able to build together ideas that make sense.
People are beginning to realize that their daily lives are wrapped up in the local races around them, and they're fed up with the long-term systems that are not serving their interests. And so they're looking for change, and they're looking for people in a party that care about them.
When we listen, learn, and create solutions for our community, we show exactly why we should be elected.
All right, I'm back here in the studio now, and for more perspective on some of the topics facing the Democratic Party this election year, I want to bring in our panel now. And joining us tonight is the co-founder of Hoosier Women Forward, Leanne Groth. Leanne, thank you for being here. Off to her left there is Jocelyn Vera, a city council member in Fishers, and Ariel Brandy is the president of Indiana Young Democrats. Ladies, thank you so much for being here. Ariel, we'll start with you. This is right in your wheelhouse. Why is it so important to recruit first-time prospects, first-time politicians?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, I would like to acknowledge the time that we're in right now. Me as a Black woman, being able to be the president of Indiana Young Democrats speaks volumes to our party, and also to the people that we're helping get elected into office. In 2018, we saw record numbers of young people running for the first time. In 2019, we had nearly 100 young Dems put their name on the ballot and make their way to the general to become elected into office. And a lot of those folks today have stepped up to the plate in the midst of COVID-19 and behind Black Lives Matter. And they are making sure that they have more inclusive policies in their seats that they sit in. And they're talking about the issues that are really tough at heart. And they're at the forefront of everything right now. And so I'm really proud to even just know that young people running for office for the very first time and having these leadership positions sets the tone for the future of the Democratic Party here in this state.
Jocelyn, I want to turn it over to you now. In 2019, Democrats won key races in suburbs like Hamilton, where you are, in Fishers, Hendricks. That's kind of a first time in certain places. Carmel, for instance. That was obviously good for your party. Is that going to be the game plan moving forward? Would you like to see more of that? And how do you plan on having that happen?
Absolutely, absolutely. So those suburbs have always been a Republican stronghold, but that's no longer the case. And I'm proof of that. I've been lucky to have earned a bipartisan support. And moving forward, I would say that you don't have to be a Democrat to vote for Democrats. And that's very important anywhere across the state, not only the suburbs.
Well, do you feel like you got support from the other side of the aisle?
Absolutely, absolutely, because everyone can see that long-time one-party rule really just feeds into this lack of accountability. And that can be, we can combat that by simply demanding more. And we demand more, how? By voting for common sense, honest, sensible leaderships. Leaders that really put citizens, Hoosiers, first.
Leanne, we'll turn the conversation to District 5. It's something that we had a close eye on all week long. Christina Hale taking the nomination. I would imagine you think she's a pretty good shot at winning this thing come the fall.
Absolutely. I think she has a really good shot of winning this thing come the fall. I'm also the proud 5th District congressional chair. So we started our work in the 5th District right after Trump was elected in 2016. Had great successes in 2018, and then 2019, as we've seen in the videos before, and as Jocelyn indicates, we won municipal races. So Miles Nelson, the mayor, the first Democratic councilman in Carmel, and 2 in Fishers, and we won in Tipton and other places. And so we've got great candidates all up and down the ballot, but Christina is an excellent candidate. We had a great field this time in the 5th, and unfortunately for the Republicans, they elected someone that is lockstep with Donald Trump.
Okay, real quick, because we have less than a minute left. Biggest topics for 2020. What's the focus here in election time?
I mean, there's several. Healthcare is extremely important, but also we're seeing with the difficulties of the pandemic, voting rights and access to the ballot is going to be extremely important.
Jocelyn?
Excellent. I would just add again, just lack of accountability in our representation. This is our government by the people, for the people, of the people, and that's what we demand.
Ariel.
Definitely voting rights and access to the ballot, but also having candidates that are willing to talk about inclusivity within their communities and really, really do the work to make sure that that shows in their areas that they represent.
Panel, ladies, thank you very much for being here. You're watching the Indiana Democratic Convention.
Coming up, how the coronavirus pandemic has put a new focus on your health care. And we hear directly from the candidates for Attorney General. You're watching the Indiana Democratic Convention on Wish TV, Indiana's only statewide news network.
Welcome back to our Wish TV presentation of the Indiana Democratic Convention. We are live in cities across the state, the first time this has happened in Indiana's history. And one of the main reasons we're hosting this convention tonight, the coronavirus pandemic.
That's right. The entire state's still under limits for large gatherings. The virus also pointing renewed attention to health care. Here again, Chairman John Zody.
Thanks, Phil. The worldwide pandemic has impacted all of us. We've lost loved ones. We've lost jobs and businesses. We've lost our center and sense of normalcy. COVID-19 is also laying bare a number of grim realities for working Hoosiers. Affordable health care is too often out of reach. Wages are stagnant, and workplace safety is too often an afterthought. Over and over, we've heard from Hoosiers worried about how they'd afford treatment if they got sick. Families worried about covering bills or paying for medication with reduced hours or eliminated jobs. Hoosiers feeling buried by the rising cost of living. Even before the pandemic, our party has been fighting to lower the cost of health care and ensure every Hoosier has access to care. We'll keep fighting to raise wages and keep Hoosier workers safe on the job site. And we'll fight to make sure paid sick days and affordable child care are a reality. Now more than ever, these battles matter.
Dealing with this is completely new to me. I've never experienced anything like this in my life, and hopefully for myself and my granddaughter, we never have to see anything like this again.
I miss seeing my family, hugging my parents and hugging my kids.
I was one of the lucky ones. I came home after a week of being in the hospital. It affected my husband and my family a great deal. My daughter, who happens to be a cardiac ICU nurse, I haven't been able to see her since.
I believe that my employer is trying to do the right thing, but when we return to the office, I wonder how my employer can guarantee our safety.
When you're trying to sell a car to a customer, it's very difficult to stay away from them, not touch the controls.
It's affected me on a personal level, an emotional level, and a financial level. Our retirement accounts are dwindling.
As my own salary has been cut 13%. I worry about our retirement, our dwindling 401k. I worry that my other son has lost his job due to COVID-19 and wasn't able to secure a mortgage.
In an uncertain economy, Hoosiers are concerned about paying the bills, about affording care if they get sick, about losing coverage if they lose their job.
Democrats have been fighting for lower cost and greater access because cancer, diabetes, heart disease, illness doesn't care whether you're white or black, rich or poor, whether you speak English or Spanish, whether you're gay or straight. Illness impacts all of us. I believe it's incumbent upon all of us to stand together to ensure that every Hoosier has quality health care when they get sick or when they get hurt.
This pandemic has shown us that more people with health care will enable them to get preventative care, which hopefully will then prevent illnesses that are longer and that are more costly and that are more deadly.
The Democrats have pushed for several initiatives to lower the cost of health care to all Hoosiers. One is to put more funding in public health. We don't have enough funding when it comes to funding these type of programs to reduce the impact of health care on our individuals. It is very crucial and important that we make sure every Hoosier can afford health care. Many Hoosiers have pre-existing conditions that if they cannot afford to get treatment, they will not get treatment. And if they don't get treatment, this affects their ability to go to work, and it also affects their ability to learn. This is vital that everyone has their health.
Let me say personally to those workers deemed essential that continue to work every day through this pandemic, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is our responsibility as a state to ensure that you receive the best health care available at no cost to you or your family.
My constituents deserve the best quality of care, and that's what we fight for as Democrats.
And welcome back. We want to continue this conversation amongst the pandemic, how it is affecting policies, legislation, and highlighting different issues within our system. We welcome right now in a new set of panelists. Ann Delaney is a former chair of the Indiana Democratic Party. Brett Voorhees is president of Indiana's AFL-CIO. And Elise Schrock is a leader of Indiana Young Democrats. There is still so much to learn about the pandemic's full impact. So right now, Elise, we'd like to start with you. First of all, let's talk about the Affordable Care Act, always front and center when it comes to elections every cycle. Right now, weaknesses have been highlighted within our healthcare system. How does all of this impact the Democrats' message moving forward?
Well, I think that we have leaders that are willing to ensure that all Hoosiers have the access that they need ahead of COVID-19, which has completely pulled the curtain away to the woeful statistics that Indiana has experienced under a decade of Republican leadership. We could talk about how we're at the bottom of most health indicators or markers. We're squarely at the bottom of those statistics. We have unmet promises on infant mortality rates, specifically when it comes to Black and brown women in our state. Those are unmet, but I think the overall larger issue is we need leaders in the State House who will listen to Hoosiers, and we do have leaders in the State House. We have leaders like Representative Robin Shackelford, who last year authored a bill to cap insulin prices. We have Democrat leaders at the State House who are working on these drug prices, who are working to make sure they're answering their constituents' needs. We need more of them, and we need Republican leaders to listen to them. That's the problem.
And what are you hearing as far as the concerns out there from constituents?
We have drug prices. We have Hoosiers, 1 in 3 don't have paid sick leave. I think that racism is a public health crisis that we have to address. And we could barely get a very watered down hate crimes bill passed 2 years ago. We have a lot of issues to address. The leadership at the State House right now is not cutting it. We need more Democrats who are going to listen and who are going to take those concerns and lead on them.
And Brett, as we know right now, things are opening up. We have some restaurants that are seating guests, and there are many essential workers who have been working now for some time. One of the limitations that happened initially was the lack of personal protection equipment. And it also is another expense for businesses already struggling. But how would the Democrats like to see workers be safe headed back into the workplace?
Yeah, thank you. These are certainly, trying times for all of us, and it's new going into this. But the problem that we're having now is going back into the workforce, going back in so quick to where we are sending people in harm's way. Unfortunately, we have bad apples out there, employers that aren't providing masks, aren't providing sanitizer, aren't providing training, aren't doing the proper tracing, different things like that would make workers feel a heck of a lot more comfortable going back into the workforce. And one of the issues is IOSHA here in Indiana. We've got 30 to 40 inspectors statewide. We should have 200 to 300 inspectors statewide. Even before the pandemic, we are one of the lowest states when it comes to IOSHA inspectors in the country. So we definitely need more support from our government to make sure that we're holding employers accountable when it comes to having safety and health on the job.
And Ann, while we're on the topic of people returning back to the workplace, there have been many who never got a break. That's right. Some of which who have been granted hazard pay by their employers. That was not anything that they had to do, something they elected to do. Grocery workers we're talking about, nurses and the like. What do you have to say about how much these essential workers are paid? And then going forward, what would you like to see?
Well, it's interesting. We've seen all the signs and we've seen all the commercials thanking the essential workers. Well, it's about time we thank them with their paychecks. A lot of these workers, I'm glad they're getting hazardous pay, but they should be paid a living wage. And I'm not talking about the $10 an hour they're making or the 12 or the 13. They should be making a minimum of $20 an hour doing the jobs they do because they're essential. The state does not function without people working in the pharmacies and people working in the grocery stores and people doing the kinds of things that have been so poorly paid. We've always been at the bottom for the hourly rates for our workers, and they need to have not only a decent wage, but they need to have health care provided. And we're not doing that across the board. In fact, we have an attorney general who's trying to kick 400,000 Hoosiers off Medicaid, excuse me. He's trying to deny them the health care that was extended under a Republican governor. And that's just unacceptable. I mean, if they're essential, we need to recognize that, and we recognize that by paying them a living wage.
Ann, Brett, and Elise, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Phil?
All right, Kylie, thank you very much. And one of the key decisions for Indiana Democrat delegates this year, choosing the party's choice for Attorney General. 2 people running for that nomination. We'll introduce you to them now.
Thanks, Phil. Karen Tallian has been in the Indiana Senate since 2005. She is currently the Senate Democratic Caucus Chair, is the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, and sits on the State Budget Committee. She also serves on the committees for Corrections and Criminal Code, Pensions and Labor, and Energy and the Environment. She has a BA from the University of Chicago and graduated magna cum laude from Valparaiso University Law School. She has practiced law in Northwest Indiana for 29 years. During her career in the Senate, she authored the bill to restructure the way mortgage foreclosures are filed to ensure homeowners' rights. She is also well known for her work to decriminalize possession of marijuana and to allow for medical marijuana. She has received numerous awards from groups as diverse as the ACLU, the Society of Innovators, the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, the American Legion, and the United Steelworkers. Karen Talion lives in Ogden Dunes, Indiana, next to Indiana's newest national park, and raised 3 children there.
In 2005, our state senator resigned, and I was asked to take her place. It had not been my plan, but I took up the challenge. And in the Senate, I worked on health care. I authored the bill that rewrote the mortgage foreclosure statute. I worked on reforming marijuana laws and bail laws. Then, in 2019, I had another opportunity. As the ranking member of the Senate Appropriations Committee, we hammered out a budget including money for health care. We addressed the terrible problem of infant and maternal mortality. But in the end, after months of work, our efforts were slashed in the last day of the budget, and I was extremely angry. Meanwhile, earlier that year, Curtis Hill had been out bragging about their lawsuit against the Affordable Care Act. This was the same man who had been accused of groping 4 women and was facing a disciplinary action. I was in Nashville, Indiana, sitting at the kitchen table of my good friend Linda Lawson, along with Betty Cockrum and a couple other women. And I said to them, that's it. I can't just sit by and watch all this happen. He has to go. And I'm taking him out. And all my friends sitting around the table that day said, do it. You are the person who can do it. So as we open this convention, it's almost exactly a year later. And meantime, I've been through another session, another battle over health care, over women's right to choose, another battle over bail reform, contraception, FMLA, and another year with more than 22,000 arrests for pot. These are not just campaign talking points for me. I've been living and breathing this stuff for 15 years. These are troubling times in our country and our state. Recent events have once again turned good people to violent protest. We need leaders, and I can do that. We have to take this important office, and this year we can do it if we choose the right candidate. Our recent poll shows that I can win, and I am ahead of all the other Republicans by 7 points. I have built coalitions with diverse groups all over the state. I will walk into that office and clean house. For all those people who cast their votes for me, thank you. And for all of you who didn't vote for me, I will work with you and for you. We all look forward to a return to a normal life and a normal convention, meeting, hugging, sharing our determination to make Indiana a better and safer place. Thanks for your participation, and please take care of yourselves.
Jonathan Weinzapfel has over 3 decades of experience serving the people of Indiana. He has been a state representative in the Indiana General Assembly and served as the mayor of Evansville from 2004 to 2011. Under Jonathan's leadership, Evansville was named the Community of the Year by the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. Chosen as the best mid-sized metro area in the nation for relocating families, and voted the #1 city in the country in which to live, work, and play. Most recently, Jonathan served as chancellor of Ivy Tech Community College, where he led several successful initiatives aimed at providing affordable quality educational programs to Hoosiers in southwestern Indiana and preparing them for good-paying jobs. Jonathan also has extensive private sector experience as an attorney, journalist, and professor, including his roles with a Fortune 200 company and one of the top 100 banking companies in the United States.
We need all emergency vehicles. A tornado has hit Ellis Park.
It was around 2 in the morning, and Evansville was hit with an F3 tornado. I was the city's mayor, and it was just devastating. Our first responders saved over 40 people in the first hour. We just pulled everyone together. We built new houses, and we did everything we could to help people. That's what we need to be doing now. I've been fortunate to spend a good part of my life in public service. I've been a mayor, a state representative, and a chancellor at Ivy Tech. I know how to bring people together to get things done. As the next Attorney General, the first thing I'll do is protect our health care. Millions of Hoosiers with pre-existing conditions could lose their health care because of a federal lawsuit filed by Indiana's current Attorney General. I'll pull Indiana out of that partisan political lawsuit on day one. I'll protect our seniors with more transparency at nursing homes, especially now. We need higher safety standards. And third, reform our criminal justice system. Now, more fairness, more justice. And in these tough economic times, I'll protect consumers and workers and make sure our small businesses have a level playing field. We've seen tough times before. We can get through them together. I'm Jonathan Weinzapfel. I'm running for Attorney General, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Thank you to both of our Attorney General candidates. Their leadership is needed to restore integrity to the office. Curtis Hill's actions in office have been disgraceful and well below the conduct of the state's top law enforcement officer. To date, Indiana Republicans have failed to remove him, but we will in November. Hoosiers deserve an Attorney General who fights for them.
So, John, I just want to grab you for a moment here. Delegates typically vote on the AG nomination. Obviously, that won't be the case this year, not in person anyway. How will that work?
They were mailed ballots. So we obviously believe as a party that mail-in voting is important. And so we mailed out ballots to delegates that we had on lists starting May 22nd. Those ballots are due back by 7 p.m. Eastern time on June 12th.
Okay. Is there a place that Democrats can go for more information on the candidates?
Sure. They can go to our website. We're updating all of our virtual state convention information on our website at indems.org. Just check out our state convention page there.
I have to talk to you about COVID-19. I would imagine that has changed the process these past few months. How has that worked out?
Well, it's worked out in a way that we feel first protects public safety and public health. We are moving our plans and changing our things to protect the safety and the wellness of Hoosiers. From our virtual state convention, the primary election moved, of course, and we worked to expand opportunities for Hoosiers to vote. So it's impacted the state's political environment in dramatic ways. But we are getting through it. We're a strong bunch of people here in Indiana.
Fair enough. John, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Coming up, how to protect Indiana schools, classrooms, and teachers. Plus, nominee for governor Dr. Woody Myers lays out his plan for Indiana. You're watching the Indiana Democratic Convention on Wish TV, Indiana's only statewide news network.
And welcome back to our exclusive coverage of the Indiana Democratic Convention preview on Wish TV and our partner stations all across Indiana.
Hard to believe it. We're now just 152 days away from Election Day, picking the next governor of Indiana and president of the United States. And a key topic in this year's election and every election here in Indiana, paying for public schools across the state.
Here again is Indiana Democratic Party Chairman John Zody.
Thanks, Kylie. Public schools are the center of communities, both big and small, across our state. The promise of a world-class public education for every Hoosier student, no matter their zip code, is guaranteed in Indiana's Constitution. But that promise is fraying. Every day before the first bell and long after students have gone home, Hoosier educators across the state are putting everything into serving their students. Their commitment is measured in hours and days and dollars of their own money spent to support classrooms. But our state government is failing those educators. Public school funding has barely kept up with inflation, and Indiana educators have the slowest growing wages in the country. 91% of superintendents report a teacher shortage. The pandemic has brought back into focus the need for investing in our educators and our public schools. Hoosier Democrats have and will continue to fight for more. More access so every Hoosier 4-year-old can attend preschool. You are 4 just once in life. More funding so every classroom has the staff and supplies students need to thrive. More resources so we can pay our educators what they deserve. Supporting our students, our educators, our public schools. That's what Red for Ed is all about.
It's the central function of state government. Everything else is relatively small in scale.
Investing in our educators is so important because our educators are the ones that mold our kids for 8 hours a day.
So we want to make sure that we're a competitive state. We want to make sure that we support our teachers and our educators to show them that they deserve more and they deserve better.
Day was fantastic. So as an educator and a legislator, I got to see both sides of it.
Because for once, I was surrounded by people who felt just as passionately as I do about children and about education.
So while I was inside most of the day dealing with legislative issues, I also went outside and saw a sea of red, probably somewhere around 15,000 people. Anyone who attended, the takeaway was, we're not in this alone.
And that day has not just become a day, but it has transformed into a movement.
Well, Red for Ed was, in my view, a moment of great awareness arising from within the teachers, not just by the teacher organizations. We have teachers starting out at $30,000 a year in this state, which is, $15 an hour for a person with a degree and a student loan.
They're the last in the country in salary growth since 2002.
But I don't want the next generation of teachers to have to get a second job to do the one that they love.
This will be my 4th consecutive year filing legislation to increase teacher pay. We know that teachers are on the front lines. We know that Indiana ranks at the bottom tier of states when it comes down to teacher pay increase.
It's so important to invest in teachers because they are affecting our future.
Well, with little time and very little extra resources, our educators have had to switch from educating our children in the classroom to educating them through e-learning. And they had to pretty much do this overnight.
I got to know more of the parents in my community and know who the essential workers were and to just give them grace.
I mean, we as teachers are answering emails, questions about content and curriculum at all hours of the day because at the very end of the day, we just want what's best for students and we want to see them succeed in any way that we possibly can.
So the teachers have to do that all the time. They deserve to be very highly compensated for that.
So we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to advocate on behalf of public education. We're going to continue to advocate for teacher pay increase that we do every single year.
And let's continue this discussion with yet another panel. One familiar face you've already seen. We welcome in two new faces this time. We welcome back Party Chair Ann Delaney. And joining us new, Greg Stowers, who worked for Mayor Joe Hogsett and in the John Gregg campaign, and Krista Carlino. Krista, I know you've been in the public education sector for more than a decade. You're also a counselor. Tell us about what the pandemic has revealed as far as weaknesses within the public education system.
Absolutely. I think, no school system is created the same. I think some school districts were ready to go to provide students an at-home remote learning experience, but far and wide, it definitely exposed the lack of funding we have here in the state of Indiana for our schools. I think that we need leadership in the State House that will fund our schools and make it so that teachers don't have to hold those second jobs, and that students have the resources like laptops, internet access, and other physical materials at home to learn, and that, quite frankly, no one can provide a service like a teacher does. So I would argue that there aren't necessarily weaknesses in the education system from the delivery standpoint, but it really exposed how we fundamentally provides teachers and school systems with resources. And I really just want to applaud the many school districts, school leaders that are out there trying to fight for their schools, going for referenda. We saw on Tuesday many school districts around the state of Indiana have to fight for their funding. We are a referenda state. Tax caps, circuit breakers are hurting our schools, and we have to beg our community members to fund our schools, and it shouldn't have to be that way. Leadership at the state level needs to stand up.
And we'll go next to you, Greg. Expound on the funding element more. Where can the funds come from, and specifically how can they be used in order to promote what Krista was talking about?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to acknowledge the incredible work of our teachers. When you look at the numbers, we're the lowest as it relates to wage growth for our teachers, and I think it's incredibly important that we are focused on them. As you see, we have teachers that are working 2 to 3 jobs just to provide for themselves, and also providing for their classrooms as well. So I think it's incredibly important that we're focused in those areas.
And Ann, I know that there are continued messages that we've heard and that will continue to be reinstated from the Democratic Party, as far as pre-K for all. Talk about some institutional changes that you're really going for right now.
Well, pre-K for all would be terrific. Early childhood education would be even better. I mean, we have some of the highest the costs in the country for childcare, and all of those things factor into the fact that we've not been investing properly in public education. We were just before the pandemic hit getting back to the funding level we enjoyed in 2008. And that is showing. We're losing teachers. People go into teaching with the right attitude and the right desire and can't afford to stay. And that's a bad situation for us to be in. We've got to fund it properly. And that means the state has to step up. And the property tax caps that were put in place are hurting our schools. They're not ready to teach remotely. Lots of places don't have access to internet access or don't have the bandwidth sufficiently to deal with it. So there are many, many things that the state could do. Almost all of them involve money. And all the money that's been going into public education now has been going into charter schools or virtual schools, which we've seen as a disaster financially, and also to vouchers. And that's not the commitment the state constitution makes to universally available quality public education.
Okay, Krista, Ann, and Greg, we really appreciate your time with us today. Thank you. Phil, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Kylie, thank you very much. And Kylie, as you very well know, in just 5 months, Indiana voters will cast their votes for Indiana's top elected position. It's been 16 years since a Democrat has held the governor's office. Now it's time to meet the pair hoping to end that streak. We want to bring back John Zodi. John?
Thanks, Phil. It's my honor to introduce State Representative Linda Lawson. I've known Linda a long time. Linda Lawson is a fighter. In law enforcement and at the State House, she was a trailblazer and a steadfast advocate on issues like pay equity and for victims of domestic violence. She went to Indianapolis to get results, and she worked across the aisle to deliver for Hoosiers. She's broken the glass ceiling numerous times. Linda is an example to all Hoosiers of what can be accomplished with hard work and determination. Linda brings a knowledge of the State House that is second to no one. In Representative Lawson, Woody Myers gains an experienced lawmaker and a partner ready to lead on day one. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to introduce the next Lieutenant Governor of the state of Indiana, Representative Linda Lawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to join you this evening and be on the Democrat ticket as your nominee for Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Indiana. The path that led me here today has been a series of crossroads as a mom, as the first female police officer in the city of Hammond, as a school board member, as a state legislator who's fought for Hoosiers for 20 years, and now as a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I stand here knowing that my story is part of the larger American story. And all your stories are very important to me. In recent days, our nation has heard a wake-up call for all of us here in Indiana and throughout our country. We must heed this call. Our elected officials, especially our governor and our lieutenant governor, must acknowledge it and respond with action. Our state and country are demanding strong leadership which can unite us, bring us together, and recognize the pain and grieving that communities have endured for generations. There's no place for the violence that we've seen. It's unacceptable to destroy property and businesses, nor is it acceptable for our police to turn to violence. Their mission is to protect all of us. Evidently, those in charge don't seem to think that our system is broken. You know, just because a system was built this way doesn't mean it's working. It's certainly not working. For the Hoosiers who are struggling, we have to change it, and we have to change it fast. Indiana needs leadership that welcomes new voices and opportunities for change. We need leaders who will fight hard for women, workers, public education, social justice, bipartisan government, a fair state budget, and a government that works for all Hoosiers. But I think about those Hoosier families who had weathered the COVID-19 crisis these past 3 months. The single mom trying to shop for groceries and doesn't want to take her kids to the grocery store with her. I think about Hoosier families who are still seeking affordable child care. I worry about Hoosiers who've lost their jobs, tens of thousands in a week. Many of them applied for unemployment in March and still have not received their benefits. Nor is there sufficient state employee staffing to answer their pleading calls. Our governor doesn't have an answer for this. The state is demanding bold, effective leadership. As a response to COVID-19, financially healthy utility companies have announced their want to charge consumers for energy they didn't use. Asking Hoosiers to cover their lost revenues could potentially impact Hoosiers to the tune of billions of dollars, and our governor doesn't have an answer for this. Yet again, Indiana needs leadership. The question now is, how does this end? Hoosiers have been set up to fail with anti-consumer policies that pit working families against the possibility of becoming financially stable. And we're getting more of the same with our current governor. We need to vote for my friend, Dr. Woody Myers. Woody's an ally to Hoosier working families that will put people before politics every single time. Indiana Democrats are ready to provide the needed leadership. We ask for your vote. We promise our unending support for you.
Thank you, Linda, and we're proud to have you on the team. I'm proud to introduce our next speaker. A third-generation Hoosier, Dr. Woody Myers is also a physician, former Indiana State Health Commissioner, business owner, husband, father, and grandfather. Throughout his remarkable career, Dr. Myers has been a consensus-building leader focused on getting the job done. At a time when leadership on health care is needed most, Woody is uniquely qualified to lead in the fight to improve access to affordable, quality care. I'm pleased to introduce the next governor of the state of Indiana, Dr. Woody Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I'm Dr. Woody Myers, your chosen candidate for governor here in my home state of Indiana. I'm humbled by your support and I'm eager to move forward. This is a milestone, but today we aren't celebrating. Instead, we mourn and we are troubled, both for the loss of life that continues for Hoosiers infected with the novel coronavirus causing COVID-19 and for the loss of the life of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. George Floyd was killed by police officers kneeling on him for over 8 minutes while he was pinned to the ground, handcuffed, and pleading for his life. His murder has sparked a revolution with protests seen now around the world. Race relations remains the most vexing political issue of our past and our present. My great-great-grandfather, Arthur Myers, was a Civil War veteran from Bullitt County, Kentucky. He was the biological son of his slave owner, Joseph B. Myers, and Hilary Clara, who was Joseph's slave and legally his property. My aunt told me of the stories of what slave women would do to discourage the repeated sexual assaults from the slave master and his sons. Imagine also the angst of the brothers, sons, and fathers of those girls and women who were forced to stand by, powerless to intercede. What my ancestors endured incenses me today as much as it did then, and this legacy of slavery still haunts us all. Over a century ago, our family moved to Indiana so that the land could be farmed and the children could receive a good education. Indiana to them represented hope, even though in the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan was a major force in Indiana government. As the first African American nominated for governor of Indiana, this history is not lost on me. I grew up in Indianapolis in the 1960s. As a boy, the color of my skin was licensed for some to treat me with disrespect, instigate fights, falsely accuse me of theft, and to humiliate me in front of others. And I was lucky. By age 21, only once did I have a handgun pointed at me out of racial hatred, and I was never shot. These incidents had a major impact. They inspired me to achieve. Experiences like mine are hard for many to understand. America is not yet the nation we could be. We promote the idea of liberty and justice for all, but we haven't finished the work necessary to make that a reality. You see, buried anger erupts because a legacy of superiority and privilege remains, an oppressive legacy that has been difficult for some Americans to relinquish. I've spent my life channeling my anger into action. I would not have become a physician had it not been for encouragement of caring and compassionate teachers, many of them white. My biology teacher, Mr. Black at Shortridge High School and Indianapolis Public School, gave me the confidence to consider medicine as a career. My government teacher, Mr. Aberson, opened my mind to politics as an instrument for social change. My pre-med advisor, Dr. DeMint at Stanford, encouraged my application to medical school. In times like these, it can be difficult to remember not to paint everyone in a position of authority, especially those in law enforcement, with the same brush. Law enforcement today is far more part of the solution than it was in the past. Today's protesters are reacting with force not seen since the civil rights movement of the 1960s. I've seen racism for decades, but I've also seen what can be accomplished if we choose to work together for a more just future. I'm running for governor of Indiana because I owe a debt to those who worked, sacrificed, and inspired me to use my education as a force for good and in service to all in Indiana, the state I love. COVID-19 has exposed for all to see our state's weaknesses in public health and in our economy. I'll rely on science to make good decisions related to COVID-19, to rectify health disparities, to clean up our environment, and to create opportunities for all, irrespective of race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. In my administration, we will have fiscal responsibility, transparency, and efficiency in government. And I will challenge Indiana to confront its past so we can work together towards a much better future. George Floyd's death was a spark. Let's use today's energy to move forward with radically improved, well-funded schools, affordable health care, effective economic policies, and sustainable climate practices. I know what Hoosiers are made of. Out on the campaign trail, I've seen your compassion, I've felt your commitment, I've witnessed your determination to fight for a better life. An economy that works for you, for your families, for your neighbors, and your friends. Together, we'll create community that supports those in need, those left behind, and those who need to know they are not alone. As your governor, I'll use my experiences as a third-generation Hoosier, as a physician, a small business owner, a father and grandfather, and as your former Indiana State Health Commissioner, to make Indiana better than we've been and everything we can be. Let's build the future we deserve together.
Coming up, we hear from Indianapolis Mayor Joe Hogsett and the former Indiana mayor who shocked the country on the presidential campaign trail. You're watching the Indiana Democratic Convention on Wish TV, Indiana's only statewide news network.
All right, welcome back to our Wish TV exclusive coverage of the Indiana Democratic Convention. We're sharing that coverage with our television and media partners around the state. The first time these conventions have been on live TV here across the Hoosier State. We're now in the month of June, which is traditionally Pride Month here in Indiana.
But this year, we won't get to see those parades and festivals across the state because of the coronavirus pandemic. That will not stop smaller celebrations, though, in cities and towns this month. And Democrats plan to put the fight up for LGBTQ rights front and center this election season.
June is Pride Month. It's a time to celebrate progress made. Progress made in places like the Indianapolis City County Council.
Progress in places like the Indianapolis City County Council.
Progress in places like the Indianapolis City County Council.
Progress in places like the Bloomington City Clerk's Office.
Progress in places like Greencastle City Council.
Progress made in the chambers of the Indiana General Assembly.
Progress in places like the campaign trail for President of the United States.
June is also a reminder
that there is still a long road ahead.
This is simple.
As Democrats, we believe in full rights and protections for all people in our country,
regardless of race, gender, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, or ability.
We believe in the freedom to pursue your dreams free from discrimination.
Democrats are working to ensure that all Hoosiers get a fair shot to achieve their dreams.
For the sake of current and future generations,
we won't stop fighting
until we put an end to injustices that threaten all Hoosiers.
And that fight doesn't stop.
The fight doesn't stop.
And that fight doesn't stop.
That fight doesn't stop until everyone in the state is protected safely and equally under the law.
In our party, everyone has a voice
and a responsibility to use it.
Our friend Christina Hale is a two-term state representative, former candidate for lieutenant governor, and our nominee for Indiana's 5th congressional district. A proven problem solver, Christina has spent her career getting things done for Hoosier families and children. In Congress, she'll continue advocating for Hoosiers by making health care more affordable and creating good-paying jobs here in Indiana.
Hello, I'm Christina Hale. I'm Indiana's Democratic candidate for the 5th Congressional District. You know, I believe that we are living through one of the most significant election cycles of our times. We're facing issues of global public health here in Indiana and around the world, and we are finally beginning to confront systemic racism in our country that we have struggled with for far too long. I want to thank everyone who is participating in this convention, everyone who's tuning in, and especially those of you that have stepped up to run for office, for precinct committee person, for state delegate, for national delegate. By participating in this way, you become part of the solution. That is a very big deal. And right now, we're going to need every single person to really make significant changes that the people here need. I want to take that ethic, that attitude, and that sense of action to Washington, D.C. to do just that, to solve problems and to confront these issues that we must deal with. We need action now. And I also want to thank you for your support in my efforts and congratulate you on what will be a historic convention. Thank you and take care.
The next speakers in our program hardly need introduction. Mayor Joe Hogsett is leading Indianapolis during a critical time and will lead our state's capital city by listening, working with, and making sure the voices of change are heard. And by taking action, like today, ordering a symbol of hate to be removed from the public square.
What once was will not be. Our nation, our state, and the city of Indianapolis will never be the same again. If there is anything we've come to learn over the past 4 months, it is that either we must find a way to change the world, or the world will find a way to change us. Yet in the starkness of that sentiment, and in the darkness of this moment, I have faith and I have hope. I have those things because we've seen crisis before. Can we change the world? Yes, we can. Because we've done it before. We created our republic. We preserved our union. We persevered through a Great Depression and saved the world from Nazi fascism. We created the strongest economy in the world and built a thriving middle class. We reached for the stars and were the first to step on the moon. What is notable about each of those achievements is that each and every one of them required the commitment, work, and sacrifice of every American. And each moment required the setting aside of our ever-present divisions. In the coming years, the converging generational crisis we face will not go away. Fear and anxiety born of a global pandemic, anger and sadness born of pervasive prejudice and violence, The world is undoubtedly changing us. The question is whether we will find a way to come together and change the world. I believe that is what we are called to do. I have faith we will conquer these challenges. The work before us seems daunting, and an election that is months away seems distant. But every journey begins with a single step. So together, let's take that step today. I thank you.
On the biggest stage, Mayor Pete Buttigieg made Hoosier Democrats proud. His relentless focus on freedom, families, and the future recentered and reinvigorated the political discourse for millions of Americans. Mayor Pete offered a new generation of American leadership and promised to build a new politics defined by belonging. My friend, Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Greetings, fellow Hoosier Democrats. I know that this is a tough time, a painful time across America and here in Indiana. We are facing upheaval as the anguish over institutional racism and police violence spills out in cities. And we also continue to see daily life radically transformed by the spread of a deadly pandemic. Our economy is dramatically impacted. Our social fabric is tattered. And America is on the back foot with respect to the rest of the world. If one thing has become clearer than ever in these recent days and weeks and months, it's that leadership matters. It is deeply important who sits in the Oval Office, who legislates on Capitol Hill, and it is so extremely important who is in local and state office. Sheriffs, representatives and senators, county officials, attorneys general, prosecutors, mayors, every office. Our lives depend on the decisions of those in office, and organizing around elections is our opportunity to bring needed and positive change. As former President Obama wrote earlier this week, aspirations have to be translated into specific laws and institutional practices. And in a democracy, that only happens when we elect government officials who are responsive to our demands. Now is the time for us to come together and insist that our leaders act according to our values. Act to confront racial and economic inequality, to follow the science on climate change and protect our future, to properly invest in education and support our teachers, to fix our broken immigration system, to lift up wages and empower workers, to fight all forms of discrimination, to support the rights of women, to uphold our deepest American values on the world stage, and to leave absolutely no question that our communities and our country value black lives equally. And that is what Indiana Democrats are doing. You've been doing the work, and it's been making a difference. You are proving that there is no such thing as a permanently red state or district or community. And you are delivering leaders who actually reflect the full range of the Hoosier communities that they serve. In 2018, Hoosier Democrats had more women, first-time, and millennial candidates on the ballot than ever before. As a result, we sent 4 women, first-time, and millennial candidates to the State House. The House netted the most seats in a decade, thanks to your work. And State Senator J.D. Ford became the first LGBTQ member of the Indiana General Assembly. And then came 2019. 838 mayoral, clerk treasurer, and city council candidates were on the ballot in 2019. Over 300 women candidates, over 140 diverse candidates, nearly 100 young Democrats. More than a dozen women ran for mayor in rural, manufacturing, suburban, and urban communities. We elected a record number of women mayors. In 2019, Hoosier Democrats elected the first African American mayor in Elkhart, elected a record number of Hoosier Democratic women mayors, elected the first woman mayor in Zionsville, and won seats in Hendricks and Hamilton County for the first time ever. Elected Goshen's first Latino city councilor. Won a majority on the council in Mike Pence's hometown. Won a commanding council majority and re-elected the mayor by an overwhelming margin in Indianapolis. Re-elected the mayor of Fort Wayne and picked up 2 at-large city council seats. We elected mothers. We elected young Democrats. We elected union members. We won in the suburbs, in the cities, and in the rural communities. Now comes the election of our lives. I didn't think the stakes could get any higher than they already were just over a year ago when I stood here in South Bend and joined the presidential race. But at every turn, it's only grown more and more urgent and important. The pandemic has reminded us why our lives depend on the decisions of leaders who should listen to science and protect our safety and health for the long term. And the recent upheaval has reminded us that our country must conquer the effects of systemic racism or see it tear down the entire American project in our lifetime. Every day reminds us that the elections this year will decide how the 2020s will unfold, and that the 2020s hold the key to the life of this nation for the rest of the century to come. That's why I believe that right now we are organizing not only to win an election, but to win the era. Ours is a diverse party, and that includes a diversity of ideas within our big tent. And that's a healthy thing in primaries and in the work of governing. We will challenge each other within as well as beyond the boundaries of our party. But looking to November, so much depends on us standing together. The question of how we emerge from this moment is nothing less than the question of what our political and economic future will be. That's why, for the rest of our lives, we will remember what we were doing in this season to bring about better leadership, to bring about real change. So let's not miss the moment. Let's embrace the challenge of finding new ways to campaign and to deliver results. And let us give ourselves reason to celebrate come November that we are getting our state and our country onto a better path. Thank you for everything that you do. Stay well, stay involved, and be safe.
You're watching the Indiana Democratic Convention on Wish TV, Indiana's only statewide news network.
I guess it was.
We would like to welcome back right now Party Chairman John Zody to talk about what lies ahead as we continue our Indiana Democratic Convention right now, live here on Wish TV. Chairman, right now, first off, a virtual convention is in your future. It'll be held June 13th.
That's right. We will kick off our events on Saturday officially, and then next Friday and next Saturday will be a series of committee meetings and events where we'll discuss our convention business. Of course, our ballots for Attorney General are due next Friday by 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and then that Saturday we will try to stick to as close to a traditional schedule as we can. It'll just all be done virtually on avenues like Zoom.
Okay.
John, what should delegates and Hoosiers know and voters know about this convention and going forward leading up to the election day?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank Hoosier Democrats for their flexibility during this time. A lot of things have changed. A lot of things continue to change as we put together this event for the first time ever. I would encourage them to keep checking our website, ndems.org, for any changes on the logistics of the convention. But I think what they should know and feel good about is that we are working to make the convention and the process as transparent and as democratic as possible. And we're going to nominate our next lieutenant governor and our next attorney general at this convention.
So you mentioned it will be on Zoom, but what does this look like in the big picture? How is this working?
Yeah, it's working well. It's to be honest, it's something we've never done before. This will be my 10th state convention as a Democrat here in Indiana, and there's always the run of show that generally runs about the same. And so this is a complete upending of that for obvious reasons and understandable reasons with the pandemic. But I think people have pulled together. I think they've been understanding and flexible from all over the state. We've got 92 county party organizations in this state that are all on board and ready to keep doing what they need to do to elect Democrats in the fall, but also preparing their delegates from each of their counties to come and participate in this convention virtually.
As far as the Attorney General goes, a nominee, delegates will know who that nominee is before the election, before the convention, the RNC convention, or the Republican convention?
They will. So we're going to have our balloting process. We'll be in by the 12th, and then we will start the counting process there. And we expect to announce our nominee for Attorney General on June 18th. The Republicans have their convention in the next couple of days after that.
And any final direction or advice for delegates right now?
Yeah. Get your ballots in. Let us know if you have problems. Keep checking that website for updates and information. Let us know. Our job is to be a responsive resource for Democrats all across the state at the Indiana Democratic Party.
John, you did a fantastic job, especially on the prompter tonight. I want to tell you that right off the bat here. We understand you have some final words.
I do.
Okay.
So, thank you. Tonight, Hoosier Democrats laid out our vision for the future of Indiana. Our candidates for Attorney General are ready to lead with integrity. Woody Myers and Linda Lawson are ready to go to work for working Hoosiers. We spoke of the need to expand access to affordable health care to every Hoosier. This pandemic has laid bare the realities too many Hoosier families face. Struggling with the rising cost of childcare, housing, and health care, Hoosiers are forced to find ways to make ends meet. The Indiana economy must work for all Hoosiers, not just the well-off and well-connected. We know the promise of a quality public education and how great educators are that spark that ignites a lifetime of success for Hoosier children. Educators are there for us. It's time we return the favor and make significant investment in our children and our state's future. Livable wages, early childhood and strong public education, protecting access to affordable health care all across the state, safety, security, equality, and equity, fairer elections. Democrats are fighting for these principles to build stronger communities. Tonight, we introduced you to our candidates leading the way in 2020 and the next generation of Hoosier Democratic leaders. Since 2016, we've been focused on building the bench and expanding the battleground. In 2019, we made historic progress, electing Hoosier Democrats across the state, often in places we've never won before. And in 2020, we'll build off that momentum and win up and down the ballot. There's just one critical element missing, and that's you. To win, our candidates will need Hoosiers just like you to step up and get involved. Hoosier Democrats are powered by grassroots supporters just like you who believe in a better, brighter, and more inclusive Indiana. Take the first step. Take out your phone and text NDEMS, INDEMS, to 66539 or log on to www.ndems.org/join. From all of us at the Indiana Democratic Party, on behalf of the State Central Committee, thank you to our partners at Wish TV, our sponsors, and thank you for joining us tonight.
And John Zoney, thank you for joining us as the Indiana Democratic Party chairman this evening. You've done a lot of work to make this happen in a short amount of time. And we thank everyone watching right now all across the state.
We'll have much more coverage on wishtv.com and the news coming up tonight at 10 and 11. Have a great night, everyone.
You're watching the Indiana Democratic Convention on Wish TV, Indiana's only statewide news network.